Hey folks, it's Sam. I'm making a quick video here. I'm talking about the massive heat wave that we have going now all around the world. This heat wave, and I'm going to be talking about that in the context of this Mars Rahu. In fact, even today on July 21st, the moon is also very close here. Um, and again, this could be a very explosive day. Um, I talked about this a while ago, particularly again as Mars gets very close to Rahu over these next couple weeks. We could see more explosive, agitating qualities. But again, right now we're just seeing it even show up as this massive heat wave around the world. By the way, last year we had the hottest summer on record. It was also a massive heat wave last summer. So this isn't unusual. This is just part of the world, but we're definitely seeing a lot of it now as well. And the effects of man-made climate change, there are some who really sort of deny this, but pumping all of these, CFCs, these chlorofluorocarbons and into the atmosphere over the last 100 years, with internal combustion engines and factory farming and all of that has created this terrible greenhouse effect where the earth is just getting hotter and hotter. We see, ice caps melting, and I saw a story of flooding in Greenland, where it's just the climate is so deregulated right now. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, or at least talk about the astrology right now, again, including this Mars Rahu. I'm also going to touch on Jupiter in Pisces. Venus just went into Gemini. So I'm going to hit a few things here, but mainly showing this. So before I get into that, again, but if you like this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell on YouTube to get notified of new videos and live streams like this. And wherever you watch live streaming content like this, if you like staying up to date based on the astrology and whatnot, again, subscribe and share this on Twitter and Facebook and other places. You also see I have a link down here, VedicAstrologyEssentials.com. I also offer a mega class special, 10 hours of classes. I'm going to drop link in the comments here for people who are watching this live and then also online. You can get, people ask me all the time, what's the best way to start learning and understanding astrology? Again, I put together this class, 10 hours, less than $10. And it's three big classes: yoga, Vedic astrology, yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedic astrology. 6-hour video that was taught to my certification course students, where I break down the whole structure of yoga, Ayurveda, Vedic astrology through what's called Sankhya philosophy, which is the universal philosophy that allows you to understand why the yoga practice works, why Indian medicine works, how you are literally a being of elements and gunas and higher wisdom, and whatnot. And so you to understand that, you can get that that class, again, less than $10 for all these classes. I also one of the classes is also quantum Vedic astrology and neuroscience. Again, it was a 3-hour class. This is 2 hours. It was actually 3 hours where you understand that, and extensive manual, and then spiritual astrology master course where I talk about nakshatra deities and other things like that. So you can check that out. Again, we're going to be talking about this today. Someone asked me, when does certification start? You can get in the certification course now. Join my email list. And again, people ask me this, and then when I send out the messages, they don't do it. So it's always available, at least most of the time. So you just have to register if you're really interested. So let's talk about this, these times right now, where we have this Mars Rahu very close in the nakshatra of Bharani. And Bharani is where that part of Aries where we see these consequences and this intense sort of restriction that comes. The god is Yama, who is the god of consequences. and we see both Mars and Rahu there. Again, we're seeing a lot of consequences come out as it relates to laws and particularly like reproduction, like women's reproductive health and stuff like that here in America. I just saw today, just before I came on, I saw the news. I just checked in to see headlines and whatnot, and it looks like one of the bodies in our Congress are trying to outlaw contraception. I mean, we're like America, we're just going back into the dark ages here. This is all very much related to this nakshatra of Bharani, which is literally symbolized by the woman's uterus. That's like the symbol of Bharani. And so this is one of the ways we can see the kind of restriction of energy right now and the consequences. But we're also seeing a lot of consequences now in this kind of scorched earth that we see, this massive heat wave that we're going through right now. And I think especially as Mars gets closer to Rahu, we might see some real fatalities and maybe some emergencies. There's definitely, obviously, the typical wildfires and whatnot. It's not even a prediction anymore to say, oh, there's going to be wildfires, bad wildfire season this summer. It's like saying, oh, there's going to be some mass shootings. It's not even a prediction anymore because it's so common to have mass shootings in America and to have wildfires in wildfire country. I live in California. I don't live in the wildfire country part, but I've seen where some people have lost their homes lately in certain areas. I know they're having wildfires in Colorado as well, and in other parts of the country. So again, there are some who still really deny that man-made climate change has anything to do with it. They're like, well, the Earth has always gone through cycles. We've not seen this before, not like this. And saying the Earth has always gone through cycles of climate, not in like 5 years, and especially not, the Earth has never had 8 billion people with, billions of internal combustion engines pumping carbon monoxide into the atmosphere, billions and billions of farm animals farting methane gas into the environment. Again, to just poo-poo all of that as if man-made climate change isn't an assumption at this point because of what humans have done and brought onto the earth in the last 100 years. And just, again, this is what typically happens is we just want to wash it all away with some simple thing. Well, the climate's always changed. It's nothing, climate change is nothing new. Again, of course it's nothing new. The climate has changed over tens of thousands of years before. But if you want to say something that is new, something that is new is this many people on Earth, this many internal combustion engines, this much pollution. Is that something new? Is billions and billions of land animals penned and herded into place? Again, destroying the land, is that new? Is anything new? Again, please think with discrimination. By the way, that's one of the biggest contributing factors, as much as we talk about internal combustion engines. But the waste product, particularly from the gaseous emissions from cows and other farm animals, literally cow farts and other kinds of emissions from penning up all these animals, destroys ecosystems and also is a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. That's something new. Talking about climate change that took 10,000 years or that happened 10,000 years ago is obviously a natural thing because there was probably there wasn't even 1 million people on the earth at that point. So again, I'm just saying this in general because these things are still said, but we're seeing just the devastating effects of things that we thought were going to happen 50 years ago. Like, I'm sorry, like 50 years from now. I remember 10 to 20 years ago, the things that are happening now was predicted to be like in 2050 or something. Now it's like 2022 and the planet is almost uninhabitable in certain places. Here in California, we're about to run out of water. Again, every pocket of the earth now is almost an eco disaster. Almost every part of the This winter it's going to get absolutely freezing cold where it gets cold. It doesn't get cold in California, but here in California we don't have the crippling cold, but we have drought now and wildfires, which is the opposite problem. Whatever is the main issue with your area where you live now on Earth, it's heightened, it's extreme now. Places that get cold get so cold you can barely stand it. When it gets hot, it gets so hot you can barely stand it. If a problem is drought, then it's hyper drought. And as was already said in the comments, Debbie Carell said wildfires in France and England too. Yeah, it's the highest recorded temperature on record in England, I saw. And again, massive. And by the way, people don't understand that if you've ever been to Europe, particularly in the summer, you realize, and if you don't know this, look on the globe, but France and England, like the latitude is much higher than the United States. Like, for example, France is about the same latitude as like New Brunswick, Canada, I think. It's very high on the globe. It's much closer to like the middle of Canada than it is like Washington, D.C., or like where I am in California, which is much lower. San Diego, California is like the same latitude as like Northern Africa, I think. Again, so we lose perspective in the hemispheres, but England and France are much higher of course, England is higher than France, but France, even at the lowest part in France, is like the highest part in America. And then you have Italy, which goes down into the Mediterranean, but even the Mediterranean is like the same latitude as like, again, I think like San Diego or something like that. So we lose perspective. So to have massive wildfires and massive heat waves in Europe, especially like Central Europe and England and France, again, there's a big difference in the temperature between France and Spain, because Spain is much more south. Italy and France, because France is up in higher on the globe. So to see this kind of massive heat wave even hitting Europe like this is an anomaly. And again, so we are seeing even just the everyday weather population now of Mars, these population centers of Mars being in Aries, and again, it's all this fire. Mars, Rahu, again, Rahu is just exacerbating the fire. And then Mars getting closer to Rahu in Aries is another manifestation of the thing that I said that is the more kind of, or is one of the socio-political dangers of this Mars Rahu, where I talked about things like assassinations and whatnot. We already saw major assassination with Shinzo Abe. We're seeing more and more of these threats to public officials. I hope, obviously, that none of that comes to bear, but those kinds of things are also possible with this Mars Rahu, especially culturally, around some of these cultural issues that we're seeing. And there's no question that one of the main hot button issues right now have to do with women's reproductive rights. And this nakshatra of Bharani is the nakshatra of the female reproductive system. It's literally symbolized by the uterus. We saw already a news event since they overturned Roe v. Wade of things like a 10-year-old girl in Ohio had to go to Indiana to get an abortion from her rapist's baby. She was raped by a family member, 10 years old. They were going to force her to have the baby, 10 years old. This is happening. And everybody knew it was going to happen as soon as they passed these laws. There was another story of a woman in Texas who was forced to carry her dead baby's body in her body because they couldn't abort it, because these, again, just ghastly, ghoulish repercussions of overturning. Again, it wasn't, you can even see that it wasn't applied with any kind of discrimination, because these absolute hardline rules that do not even acknowledge the life of the mother, even if the mother is a 10-year-old victim of incest and rape, obviously, or someone who's there's no possibility that this baby can be born alive and the woman has to carry it around dead. These things are an abomination, is terrible. and it's just terrible that these things are happening. So again, this is a symptom also of this Mars Rahu in Bharani Nakshatra. So this is why I said that as Mars enters Bharani and in the same nakshatra of Rahu, we can start to see some of the more, difficult qualities. Somebody pointed out here, and I'm just going to read the comment because you not only don't understand what I'm saying, but it says accusing the animals is a very ridiculous, weird thing. They are our victims, and now we can blame them for our situation. Aha, smiley face, namaste. I don't know what you're talking about or why you think I'm accusing them or as if, but it's not ridiculous. If you don't understand this, look at factory farming and environmental consequences and devastation. Okay. I'm not blaming them, however you say your name, Kasaba, Dalmati. I'm blaming us for doing this to them. In case that's not clear, okay, what might be ridiculous is that you don't understand the issue at all, but factory farming processes and the repercussions of that and their gaseous emissions and the methane release is more damaging to the environment, or at least as bad as internal combustion engines. But the reason you've never heard of this, frankly, your ignorance is a testimonial to what is the most disgusting part of this, is that you never hear about this part of the environmental, Greenpeace organizations or those that want to save the environment. You never hear them talk about factory farming processes, so much so that even folks like yourself are ignorant of it. You hear about internal combustion engines, green energy, green fuel, green energy, wind, solar, anything but stop internal combustion engines, which is true. Stop internal combustion engines. You don't hear anything like stop factory farming. Stop doing that because it's even more damaging to the environment. Not to mention the clear cutting of the rainforests to feed these land animals. If you're not aware of this, Kshabi Dalmati, please, before you make public comments calling somebody ridiculous, get educated, okay? And again, it's probably not your fault that you're this ignorant, but you don't hear about this in the media. When's the last time the media said, the leading cause of factory farming, the leading cause, even a bigger leading cause of global warming is factory farming practices and how clear cutting of the rainforest in order to make room for land animals and all of this, and the emissions from the land animals and whatnot is more devastating or as devastating as internal combustion engines. You don't hear the media say this because they're supported by big agribusiness. So it's not ridiculous, and you should get informed about these things. This economic and ecological devastation is a big part of what's going on now. And we can see this in the world with this Mars Rahu conjunction. In fact, I'm just going to do it just so people know. Here, I'm just going to post this. It says, factory farming, the real climate culprit. I just did a simple search, global warming, factory farming, the real culprit, blah, blah, blah. Takes 2 seconds to be educated. So you have the sum of human knowledge at your fingertips. Do a Google search, global warming, factory farming, and you will see for yourself that what I'm saying is not only ridiculous, it's factual. And I'm saying this on behalf of the animals. I'm not blaming them. I'm blaming us. And again, as Debbie also said, not to mention the waste of food. Do you know how much most of the food that we grow is used to feed land animals that we eat? It's the most inefficient use of our energy, of our water. Most of the water we waste. Again, I live in California where there's a water shortage. You know where most of the water goes? To feed cows and factory farms, or at least a lot of it. I don't know if it's most, but it's a larger percentage. We get nothing in return, but it's subsidized by the government big agribusiness. And by the way, if we had to pay the actual price for what that hamburger cost, it would probably be about $10. But because it's subsidized by the government, it's like everything else. It's like our weapons programs. They're all subsidies. It's all big business. And it's not only unhealthy for us, of course, it also feeds the pharmaceutical industry, but it's inefficient. It promotes the most vicious cruelty. It's terrible for the environment on every level you could imagine. It destroys local ecosystems because of all the poop that destroys the local aquifers and streams. There is nothing but devastation as it relates to this, every way that you could ever imagine. So, as Debbie said, if we stop breeding land animals, we could solve world hunger. We could help to heal the environment. Of course, we would stop killing these animals. So there is nothing, we get almost nothing in return except for a tasty hamburger and a bunch of jobs where, again, these people could do other jobs. And these jobs are terrible. These people that have to work in these slaughterhouses, I can't imagine the terrible blight they must have to live through. They're usually poorly paid migrant workers who are exploited. It's a terrible, devastating, awful blight on humanity. And so, yes, I'm going off about it a little bit because not only should the person who said that understand it, but anyone else who doesn't understand this, please get educated instead of using the internet for like just watching videos or confirming your bias around weird things. Use it as a tool. Do some research with it, actual research. It's not hard to find out. I mean, I've known this for 30 years. As soon as we started looking at global warming, we were on it. So it's been known for a long time. So this is a big thing right now, though, and we can really see astrologically something that I've referred to, that I've been referring to for a while, and especially the political fallout and the social fallout of the Mars Rahu in Aries. But we're also even literally seeing it now in this potential real potential devastation, and how I think this is going to be going on for a while. A big part of the rest of the summer, Mars Rahu in Aries going forward for the next several weeks. And then Mars goes into Taurus. Maybe we'll start to see some of it calm down, but dangerous times. And as you also see in this chart, we have Jupiter in Pisces. And you may have seen, again, I'll just post the link here that I'll drop these links again, that I've done a whole web class with this Jupiter in Pisces for you and all 12 signs so that you can learn about what this transit means. It's a very important time. It's great for study. And that includes, if you've been watching videos like this, now a time to study things like this, to take advantage of, $10, 10 hours of classes for $10. Again, if you're just kind of dabbling, now is a great time to actually elevate your relationship with Jupiter energy, really check in with pure teachings, higher wisdom. And so you can also, get that. It's a free class. And I also do some great case studies where I went back to the last time Jupiter went through Pisces and made some parallels. So these are very transformative times and very uplifting and inspiring times. You can see this Jupiter is also aspecting Mercury right now. Again, because Jupiter casts this trinal aspect. It's now 14 degrees of Pisces, and it's aspecting like 14 degrees of Cancer, 14 degrees of Scorpio. If you have any planets there, they're getting that aspect. The sun is going to be going over that as well. So every time, a few times a year when Jupiter aspects the sun, it's also quite an auspicious time because the sun is the sun and Jupiter is casting that guru's glance. So he's aspecting the sun now. In about 10 days, it'll be even more of a powerful aspect. So again, this is a very good time to take advantage of things like this free class on understanding Jupiter in greater detail, understanding Pisces, understanding how he relates to even the sign of Sagittarius, how he's the indicator of things like children and gurus. And of course, take advantage of things like these, like this, it's actually 90% off of a group of classes. By the way, the person who asked about certification, if you if you go to this web class, this page that I put in there and give your information, you'll get a bunch of free classes that lead to you being able to get certified if that's what you want. So again, I'm always offering these things because I'm mainly a teacher and I do these free classes like this one because I like to keep people up to date so you can see how these things work. And again, very clear here with Bodhani Nakshatra and this Mars Rahu in Bodhani, all of the pressure against women and those kinds of things, we see it very clearly. Even again, all these stuff with the overturning of women's rights, even this restriction around, now that we're, running out of water and all these other different, heat, this massive heat wave is also a real restriction. Now we kind of stay in trying to survive it. And Bodhani, again, it's these consequences. And that means the consequences of our bad decisions as it relates to things like factory farming and, internal combustion engines, and how decades ago, when they knew this was happening, particularly Republican politicians, Ronald Reagan stripped out all of these plans that Jimmy Carter had made in 1980 to start to transition off of fossil fuels. We've known since the late 70s that this was coming. Oil companies knew, politicians knew, around the world, I'm not just blaming Ronald Reagan for everything, but around the world. And these environmental regulations were stripped. Now, the Republicans in America, they refuse to even vote on climate legislation. The Supreme Court here in America just deregulated industries even further so they can pollute the environment even further. It's a nightmare. And when I'm talking about this, because this Barney, this is the consequences. We're seeing the consequences now. It's right in our face. And are people doing anything about it? No. Like I say, we've been seeing this heat wave now, this massive heat wave for the last couple of weeks. Within that time, the Supreme Court deregulated or made it possible for these industries to not be sued for violating environmental laws. Just recently, we just had, again, I think even today in the Congress, the Republicans are trying to outlaw, put more restrictions on contraception. Of course, there's restrictions on allowing women freedom over their body. Not to mention, they can't pass gun legislation. Look at all the violence and the things I was talking about with Mars Rahu and all of the violence and the shootings and whatnot. You still can't get Republicans in America to pass gun legislation. Yes, I'm calling out a political party because there's one political party doing this now. And it's the Republicans in America and the right wing on the courts. It's the same group. They want to take away women's rights. They want to keep guns everywhere. It's one group of people. And I'm not going to act like they're all bad. Yeah, they're all bad in a lot of ways. They're all corporate. And this is why it's hard to, I don't like, the system is terrible, but there is still one political party that is taking away women's rights, doesn't want to do anything for the environment, doesn't want to regulate guns, doesn't want to do any of that stuff. And we're seeing the results of those things. And in spite of what's right in front of our face, they would still refuse to do any of it. Botany is about consequences, and these are the consequences that you get. This is the consequences. And it's also consequences of having an electorate that doesn't educate themselves, that doesn't pay attention to what elections mean. Elections have consequences. Instead, they're foolishly being triggered by culture war issues or other kinds of things, or, oh, this will never happen, or whatever. Yeah, this was not a surprise. It should not be a surprise to anyone who has been paying attention, especially for the last five years or so, or more, back into the last election, back in 2015, 2016. Shouldn't be a surprise that this was going to happen. So these are consequences of all kinds of things. So again, these consequences that I've already talked about are also dangerous, and I still have the fear of things like assassinations and things boiling over, and potential for massive unrest that's still there. Of course, I haven't even mentioned things like the war in Ukraine and all of the other hot button things going on, things in the Middle East. There's all kinds of things going on. I just mainly wanted to show the uh, that we can literally even see the visceral reminder of this hot these hot issues right now with the heat cranked up, um, unprecedented heat wave, even in places where they don't have it, like Europe and and um, these places that exist in these northern latitudes, even like in England and France, highest record ever in England, highest recorded temperature. So is and as well, we have things like this powerful Jupiter in Pisces. So it's really a time to also let go of the bad teachings. And if you feel like you've been misled, even like, brainwashed or misled by these teachings and these things that you've believed, Pisces is really about letting go. It's about surrender. Surrender. That's usually the hardest thing, is to let go. I've been doing a lot of readings lately, a lot of consultations, and I still get this thing of like, well, how do I surrender? How do I tell me how to surrender? And I recently did an example. I'm trying to find something I can drop. I recently did an example where I said, you want to know how you surrender? Here's how you do it. You see this? Here's how you surrender. You go like this. You let go. Let go. That's how you surrender. Surrender means let go. Just like we let go every night when we go to sleep. Think about it. You don't will yourself to sleep. Think about sleep. This is why sleep is also related to things like Pisces and surrender, because you don't will yourself to sleep. Sleep comes and overtakes you, and your ego surrenders to sleep. It's not conscious, but sleep just overtakes you eventually. If you're someone like me who's a bit of an insomniac, whose mind has a hard time turning off at times, one of the things that happens is, boy, you wish you could will yourself to sleep. But we can't even will ourselves to sleep. We can't even will ourselves to. So how can you will yourself to surrender? Because the very thing that's doing the willing, or that wants to do the thing, is the thing that needs to surrender. It needs to, and it eventually recedes and it succumbs to sleep. Sleep is a surrendering of the ego. And the Jupiter in Pisces is really the power of that, the power to surrender and trust. And this is why, and this is how Jupiter is related to guru. Because if we meet a guru, or let's say our guru is just these teachings or something more abstract, but we trust the guru enough to what? Surrender and let go and realize that our ego is not in control. We have the illusion that it's in control, but it's not. So we need to surrender the illusion. You need to surrender the illusion that you're this being that's born and it's going to die, and that's the reality. And people say, how do I do it? You just let it go. So if you can't do that, actually you can do it. It's just you're afraid to let go. And again, this is why the trust in the guru is so important. Guru or the teachings, but most people, they say the teachings and it's just it's an idea. There's no love there. There's no trust. When there's love, it's easy to surrender in the arms of the guru, just like when you were a child and you surrendered in the arms of your mother. This is why many times the mother is the first guru, because it's the first trusting bond. And we surrender to that. We trust that the mother wouldn't hurt us. We trust that the guru won't hurt us. And eventually, we trust these practices are real and we can surrender into them. We can relax the ego, surrender the ego to this part of yourself that's much higher. So that's very Piscean in nature. And again, you should learn about that authentically and really learn what those things are and surrender and trust these higher teachings and this higher wisdom of Sankhya philosophy, timeline of life on Earth. Do you realize how long everything's been here? 4.5 billion years. And you have this puny little lifetime that's barely a blip in the midst of the enormity of time and the wisdom that is in control. You have no control over anything. All of this cosmic wisdom is really what's making everything work. And it should humble you to the point to where you surrender and relax into that. Instead, we hang on to this identity that tries to figure it out, and I'm going to make the universe the way I want it. Good luck. You can't do anything. Even that your body is the wisest thing you have. You put food in your body and your body knows what to do with it. That wisdom of the cosmos is, again, folded into your body. That's why your body brings you to sleep. Then we wake up and then our ego says, oh, I'm in control again. I'm me. I'm all these ideas. We're crazy. It's crazy. We're disconnected from the truth. So we can see that in the sacred astronomy, the sacred number 108, the cosmology of 4.5 billion years relative to your small ego and karma. But then, and again, this is the first class, then I talk about how the energy of spirit takes form, how it really comes down, what all of these qualities of life are, then these divine planets. Again, so this is your true nature. And when you learn these things, then you can surrender and you can stop feeling like you're defined by everything that happens or that you're the doer. So again, Jupiter in Pisces right now is the most opportune time. It's only there for a year to surrender and trust and really get this message I'm saying and understand like, wow, you know what? That's true. I don't know what's going on. I'm not in control. I need to just trust, surrender, relax, and then everything happens. But instead, what we do is we tune things out. Instead, we escape. Escapism is not surrender. But this is what we usually do with Pisces energy is there's a lot of escapism now. So it's very easy to escape into even things like conspiracies or escape into a bunch of, again, easy to be in a kind of brainwashing or escape into some other kind of fantasy state where we don't really know, we were just believing something else because we want it to all kind of blur together. No. Just surrender and relax. Right? You were never born, you'll never die. I'm writing some songs right now, which are really cool. That's what I'm doing with all these transits I'm having right now. So maybe pretty soon I'll come out with some songs and blow your mind. All right. So anyway, I wanted to just talk about this today. And there's, again, there's also Venus and Gemini, a great time to really be communicating with partners. I just did a video not too long ago, really analyzing and assessing your agreements. Sun, Mercury, and Cancer also very sensitive, a lot of sensitivity right now, and really bringing all of our ideas into the heart and feeling that need to have our ideas anchored in the heart. Saturn and Capricorn, again, really helping to bring all these thoughts and ideas into the power of commitment and, practical effort that improves your daily life. So again, I hope this was helpful. Please like, share, and subscribe this again. As I said, that really helps. leave some comments and whatnot as well. So thanks a lot.